Ruling finds that Oklahoma can prosecute non-Native Americans for crimes on tribal land. So let's unpack that. Essentially, that case gave the state of Oklahoma the right to have precedent and jurisdiction in tribal nations when it comes to crimes committed by non-Indigenous people in tribal nations. Now, this is important for Oklahoma because we have 39 recognized tribal nations here and have the second largest Indigenous population in the United States at 13.5% of our population. And no one is more pleased about this ruling than the Oklahoma governor. Governor Kevin Stitt said the court upheld that Indian country is a part of a state, not separate from it, meaning that the governor of Oklahoma is now no longer recognizing tribal sovereignty that has been established for 200 years. So let's unpack the impact a little bit more outside of Stitt's view. The ruling on this case directly impacts Native American tribes, tribal members, and especially Indigenous women. By giving the power back to the state to prosecute for crimes that occur by non-Indigenous people in tribal nations, the state has the power to do what it's always done: dismiss and minimize crimes against women and people of color. Specifically, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Movement is working to ensure the safety of Native women, and the release of tribal sovereignty significantly harms that movement. Oklahoma is currently the 10th highest state for missing and murdered Indigenous women. More than 4 out of 5 Indigenous women will face violence in their lifetime. And Indigenous residents on reservations face violent crime at 2.5% the national rate. Now, given that non-Indigenous people commit 88% of the crime in tribal nations, this is a really dangerous situation. Because 88% of crime is committed by non-Indigenous people and the state of Oklahoma tends to favor white men in their judicial system, this poses a big risk. Muskogee Nation referred to this as an alarming step backward for justice and reservations in cases where non-Native criminals commit crimes against Native people. They addressed the longtime history of Oklahoma overstepping into tribal nations and failing to deliver justice for Indigenous victims. They also point out that this expands the Oklahoma legal jurisdiction to not only Oklahoma tribal lands, but to tribal lands throughout the United States, as it was a Supreme Court case. The 5 civilized tribes of Oklahoma also issued a statement wherein they asked Governor Stitt to drop his anti-sovereignty agenda. So what is it that we can do? As a member of Oklahoma and as a white woman, I believe that it's important to listen to Indigenous voices and to listen to the sovereign nations in Oklahoma and the United States for guidance on what next steps to take. In the meantime, we need to be raising awareness. This issue got pushed underneath the rug when Roe v. Wade's overturning came out, as well as when Miranda rights were overturned. This is just as important and just as detrimental as those 2 issues, and it needs to be paid attention to. It is our job to not stay silent on this, as that is complacency.